it is.
There it
I
is.
still love the explosion at the back end because I kind of watch it and I kind of go, I don't actually really know what that means, but it looks good.
Yeah, only Daz knows.
I know it's got no relevance to anything we do, but it looks great.
You know what? It'd be good to ask Daz actually, like
Exactly,
why he does the little things at the,
Yeah.
at the end. But
what is the Putin relevance?
we're back. Loaded Mag NUFC away days. Reviewing the big game, Liverpool at St James's Park on Saturday, and it's great to be back. Had a few days off from Loaded. Took a rest. Obviously, Mark, you've not been 100%, so it's great to have you back on.
Thanks, mate.
How's things going? You okay? You get back to 100% now?
Yeah, getting there. Obviously, there's few people that know. So yeah, about just under 2 weeks back, wasn't feeling too good. Popped off to see the GP, who went into panic mode and sent me straight to A&E. And had a bit of a scare, possible blood clot in the leg, which wasn't great. So yeah, a bit of a scare. Kind of puts another bit of perspective. Obviously, following on from last year with both parents passing and stuff, was a bit of a shitty old start again to the year, and kind of you're looking at things and kind of going, God, when am I ever going to get a bit of a break? But yeah, luckily enough, load of scans, really good care in the local hospital. Got the all clear after kind of 48 hours in the hospital. So we're saying to Pete coming on air before we came on that I'm doing a bit of cold water therapy and different bits and pieces. Ordered myself a nice little pod thing to put outside and fill up with a bit of water and ice, and that kind of helps with the circulation and everything else. And I suppose I have to admit that I'm not 22 anymore. I am a little bit older. So yeah, I got to start taking care of myself. But I got loads of messages from people, in particular Jules and stuff, who sent me private messages and everything else. So look, again, I seem to be the only one that keeps coming on here saying the same thing. Thanks to everybody who messaged me to get well and everything else. But yeah, no, I'm back. Everything is good, and delighted to be back on. Always enjoy a bit of away days, and we got a few shows coming up over the weekend and stuff. So yeah, looking forward to doing a couple and being I was going to say being back on my legs, but yeah, it's probably a really bad joke. So yeah, we'll move that on rapidly. But yeah, thanks to everybody that messaged me. It does mean a lot, and you guys, Pete and Daz and Chris and Richie, all the boys sent me messages and love and kindness as always. So thanks very much.
Great to have you on, Mark, as always, and great to know that you're on the way back to full health.
Until whatever's next.
No, don't say that. I know this is it now. This is it.
That's it. Yeah. I need a clean patch. Just yeah.
But look, we're on away days. This is for me. I've got to be honest, and there's a few in the chat already giving their opinions on this game on Saturday. And look, me and you, Mark, we've just been talking about the cup final, but this is the game of focus right now. The Premier League, huge game at St James's Park against Liverpool. What are your thoughts going into this game just before we bring Neil in? Because I know he's waiting in the green room. What are your initial thoughts about this game, Mark, from your perspective? Are you confident?
Probably not as confident as I was maybe 4 or 5 games ago. I think we've got, obviously, look, we've spoke about Wilson. I don't know how many times I've taken, as you well know, I've taken a bit of flack at times for calling him made of glass. Injured, Miggy, I'm kind of hearing mixed things that he is going to be out, he isn't going to be out. So don't fully know. Obviously, Bruno missing is massive for us because I think we've seen in the Bournemouth game, we really struggled to get going, contain anything. I think you guys did the reaction show to Bournemouth. I thought it was our worst performance of the season. I thought it was really, really poor. A lot of people didn't. And I get that, there's folks out there going, hey, we haven't lost. We're still in 4th and we're in a cup final. That's great, but we're kind of stuttering. And now, listen, I think we all expected to have a little blip in the road. I'm hoping Eddie's got a good plan and that we can turn up, under the lights again and perform. I don't think we've got huge amounts to fear from Liverpool, put it that way. I think they're beatable, and I'm sure we'll talk to Neil about it. But to be honest, I think we fucking owe them one because we should have won that game in Anfield with a perfectly good goal. What would have been Isaac's double. So, look, I think when you're at home at St James's, war flags, 52,000 behind us, we always stand a really good chance. I don't think they're in massive form. I think, look, they got to win the other night, but I don't think they were great. It was two good counter attacks. The first goal was really good from Liverpool. The break was unbelievable, but it's against a really, really bad Everton team. And, look, little arms Pickford, showing why he's England's number one. 2 million miles. He was actually nearly on the Anfield Road, let alone in his goal. So yeah, no, I think it's going to be a tougher game with what we've got out and what we've got missing. I think if we had full squad, Bruno in, I think I would be way more confident. But I think it'll be a bit tighter than I would like.
Great opening assessment of where we're at, Mark. And look, there's a few things that you mentioned there about Liverpool and about their form and what you think about the game on Saturday. And as always, we on away days love the opposition's view. So let's bring him in and get his view. Welcome to Neil Atkinson of the Anfield Wrap, coming back for another show and another preview. Welcome in. How you doing?
Very well indeed. It was a shame you didn't try and win the game at Anfield. Second half. Why didn't you just try and win it? We're shite.
Don't start this thing.
We're shite. We're shite. And the really weird thing was, I'd love the manager if he's asked in the press conference to be asked about it, because it was weird to me. Second half, I was watching a really poor Liverpool side be really poor, and then other than late Chris Wood's header, and obviously the one that gets ruled out, and I understand people's frustration about that. Newcastle don't have a shot. Time waste, take up loads and loads of time. It was really weird because we were crap. And we still are, say what you want, but we were crap. We were there for the taking, and Newcastle didn't bother to take us. I'm just hoping you try to win at home.
Oh, trust me, from my perspective, we will, and I'm sure, Mark, I'm sure you agree with that we're gonna go for the win. There's already a few people in the chat that are still remember.
Maybe you'll take the throw-ins a bit faster.
Oh,
you know what I mean? Newcastle maybe a few Newcastle players will have a lie down in the second half.
I think the thing is, we've just kind of caught up, Neil, with the whole shithousery that the top 4 or 5 have been doing for the last however many years, mate. It's just a bit obvious.
But genuinely though, it was 1-1, and this is the poorest Liverpool side for 7 years, and you were wasting time. Genuinely, like, we were there for the taking. We were there for the taking, and I was watching it live. Absolutely, like, this makes no sense to me. Why don't you start playing some progressive football and absolutely get on top of us?
But one thing I'll say, Neil, on the back of that is that we were in a different space at that point in time, where the Newcastle United that you're looking at now, 4th in the table, what we've produced this season, we weren't at that stage yet. So there's an area of we maybe could have been a little bit more progressive in the second half, but there's an element of confidence and knowing the tactics, knowing the way in which we play. That's been developed since, and we've shown against good teams. We did it against Tottenham. We were more progressive against Man United at Old Trafford. We were the same at times against Arsenal, although our defensive tactical setup was very, very good. We didn't sit back behind the ball. We went for them, but Arsenal were just very good and just pinned us back. But again, Chelsea at home, we proved that we could go at a team and cause them problems, and we ended up winning that game. But we played you really early on in the season, in my opinion, and I think that's why there's I think if we'd played you and we'd had a similar game now, I think we'd go on and win the game, in my opinion. With those players, I think we go on and win the game in that situation. But there's an element of where we're still growing, and we still are growing as a team. We still are growing as a team. Look, I know we're going to get into this. There's no doubt about it. And look, Neil, you've come out the traps. You've come out swinging, and I love it. I absolutely love it. But look, it's great to have you on first and foremost. Before we get into the nooks and crannies of the game on Saturday, obviously you guys must be very, very happy at the moment. Monday night, under the lights at Anfield, you won the game. You won the game 2-0. You got Sky bigging you up, saying you're back. You've got lots of other pundits and
baby steps, Pete. No. It's got to be baby steps. Let's be clear about this. In the end, where that game ends up on Monday night, a Liverpool side with one of the biggest wage budgets in the Premier League cruises to victory against a side who are 18th, and who have either the 18th, 19th, or 20th best squad in the division, depending on your point of view. It's always nice to win a Merseyside derby, but I'll never turn my nose up at winning any of them. But the truth of the matter is that that's a really poor Everton side. It's a really, really poor Everton side. Apart from set pieces, they can't create a chance. So let's not get too carried away. If there's reasons to be, mildly enthused, it's that they don't come off second best physically, which was the only thing that Everton had in the locker, to be honest with you. But they don't come off second best physically. A couple of the players who've had really poor seasons play okay. It's worth saying. Salah gets a goal, which is great. He's been crying out for one. Gakpo gets a goal, which is his first for the club. That's great. He's been crying out for one. Gomez plays really, really well, but he's playing up against a lad who couldn't get a game for Sunderland. So it doesn't feel as though, Gomez needed that sort of night. If you hadn't put that 90 in against him, then good God, you'd have been hugely concerned. All in, it's baby steps. I think Liverpool can finish top 4 this season, but they've got to rebuild the form in small steps. And, as part of that, St. James's Park at the weekend, with all the stuff going on around Bobby Robson, Liverpool have got to get through the first 20 minutes. The game for me is defined by whether or not Liverpool get to half an hour 0-0. Liverpool get to half an hour and they haven't conceded, then it's a game that Liverpool can win. But there's every chance Liverpool have conceded, because there's so many games this season where Liverpool have conceded goals early, and it's in everyone's head. It's absolutely in everyone's head, and we've got to rebuild it. And so, this is one to be part of that rebuilding process. And from there, we're gonna have to find our way through, and it's going to be really, really difficult on Saturday.
Mark, you've heard from Neil. Neil saying it could well be a difficult game. What are you most worried about from a Newcastle perspective about what Liverpool could potentially cause in terms of problems?
I think from a midfield perspective, I think we kind of, to a degree, we probably nullify each other a little bit. I think Liverpool's midfield doesn't seem to have that same kind of flow and movement it did. I think for me, as somebody, and my uncle is God rest his soul, was a massive Liverpool fan from Merseyside. I think one of the biggest things for me, and I think, Pete, we spoke about this last season, I said at the start of the season, I didn't think Liverpool would be the same, because I think Sadio Mane is a massive loss. And I think Liverpool would have done better and playing better without Salah and having kept Mane. I think Mane was what made that front third in particular tick. I think the speed of break, the first goal against Everton, I thought was outstanding. The break, the pace of break, and the ball, Núñez on the left. I thought the break was unbelievably quick, and the finish from Salah was top notch. But Darwin Núñez is not a left winger, and is playing out of position. So I think Klopp is trying to accommodate players more than kind of come up with the style. I think the back four can be got at. I don't think they're great defending. I think people talk up Trent. I think Trippier is a much better player, in my opinion. And that's not just because he's in black and white, but I just think he's a better player all round. So I think we can get at them. But I think game-wise, I think we can contain them. I think our defense, I think, with Shaw, Botman in particular, Trippier kind of leading that back four burn, I think we can maintain the attack that Liverpool have. I think what we need to do is certainly we need the likes of, I think Willock being out is going to be massive for us, especially with Bruno not being there. So it depends whether, Joe Linton and Longstaff step their game up to kind of contain that midfield.
Yeah.
As much as I hate to say it, I prefer to see Henderson play. I think he's top midfielder as much as he's a Mackham. But I think other than that, there's not too much that worries me about Liverpool. So yeah, it'll be interesting. I think if we, I take Neil's point about, if Liverpool don't concede in the first kind of 30, there's a game there to be had. But I think we've got to take the game to them. I think at St. James's, under the lights, I think we've got that first 15, 20, we've got to come out the traps. I think Eddie will have a game plan, but I just don't know if we've got it in us at the minute. We're stuttering. I said that to you before coming on air. I think we're stuttering a little bit. And it's a hard one to call, but I think I would have been more worried if that front three was still Mane, Firmino, and Salah. I would have been saying, okay, we're in for a proper game, but I don't think there's that much to fear. But if they break like they did and we don't contain it, then we could get caught. But I think we need to be stronger in midfield, and I think if we can get to grips with the midfield, then I think we stand extremely good chance of winning that game at St. James's. And the fact of being at home, I think, helps.
Definitely. I think it does help. I think being at St. James's Park, like I say, under the lights, 52,000 Newcastle fans. You can see it in the chat. You can see the comments that everyone's kind of banging on about revenge and getting our own back for losing that game. It's the only game we've lost this season in the Premier League. And I think with Newcastle fans, it's still a little bit of a sour taste in our mouth in the way in which we lost that game. But there's a number of things that you talked about there, Mark, that I want to get Neil's opinions on. So Martin mentioned from his perspective, one or two things. First of all, your front three not being as strong this year compared to the previous years when Mane was here. As well as that, he's talked about your defence not being as strong, and I want to get your thoughts on one or two players and whether they're going to be back and featuring at the weekend. But equally, on the right side of your defence, he's talked about Trippier being better overall than Trent. There's a few things there that I want to unpack. So wherever you want to start, let's start with the front three. Do you agree from that perspective they're not as strong as your front three of old?
I agree that. Oh, yeah. I mean, it sort of goes without saying, let's be clear about this. From 2017 until 2020, it doesn't get better than Firmino, Mane and Salah. Just doesn't. It was an incredible front three. It was capable of everything. They were the absolute business. That said, ultimately, Mane was losing his legs over the course of last season. He finished his last season really strongly, Mane. But in the first part of the season, he finds himself struggling for form a little bit. Liverpool supporters were a little bit more damning of him in the first part of the season. So what happens is that we buy Diaz and Mane moves in central and he's able to contribute a bit more, but he's still not, he scores some big goals for us, don't get me wrong, but he's still not the player he was going back a little period of time. The player who I think we've missed the most this season is Diogo Jota. Last season, Diogo Jota scores 15 goals for Liverpool. And he scores 4 of those 15 when Liverpool are losing, and he scores 6 of those 15 when Liverpool are drawing. So he scores 10 goals over the course of the campaign that are game-breaking goals, that are significant goals. And we've missed those goals so much. We've missed them so much. He won't start on Saturday. He'll be on the bench. He'll be on the bench from the outset, but he scores game-breaking goals. And then he got an injury around sort of February, and he wasn't quite the same player when he came back. He still scores an equaliser at the Etihad. We're 1-0 down at the Etihad. City are smashing us to smithereens in April. And we get up the other end, and Jota just converts. And it's the last goal he scores last season. And I actually think he should have started the Champions League final. But we've missed that from him over the course of this campaign. You'd always miss someone who's got the sort of the all-round game of Sadio Mane, but he wasn't quite the same force he was last season, as far as that's concerned. We go to Arsenal away this campaign. Diaz ends up in a situation where, he gets an injury then. So we've lost Jota and we've lost Diaz as that sort of season starts. We lose Firmino when we come back after the World Cup. Gakpo then gets in. Nunez is a little bit in and out, both in terms of his fitness and also in terms of his form. And he gets suspended at the start of the season for 3 games. So if the line is Liverpool aren't attacking as well, absolutely couldn't agree more. The flip side of that is we're not far away from being in a position where our 6th best forward is Roberto Firmino in terms of availability. So if we get everyone fit, Roberto Firmino's number 6 in the list, which is an astonishing level of strength and depth, the like of which I can never really remember from a Liverpool squad. The next sort of phase on this is, as part of, all of that, I think you can think that Nunez isn't really a left winger, but I don't think Liverpool want to play Salah and Nunez in the space between centre-half and full-back. They don't want them on the outside of the full-back. So both Salah and Nunez to attack the space, if you imagine you're playing against a back four.
Yeah, they want to break the 2 lines.
break those two lines there, and then have a lad who's sort of a bit false nine, number 10 in the middle of that. And that's where I think Nunez can offer a great deal playing off the left, in that he's starting from the left-hand side, but attacking centrally. And then you have one of, for instance, Gakpo, Firmino, Jota to a degree. I think it'll be interesting to see where he uses Diaz when Diaz gets back. I think there's every chance Diaz ends up playing through the middle a little bit for Liverpool as well, because he's a little bit more of a midfielder than he is a forward. But we'll see that as it sort of develops, and I could be wrong on that score. In terms of the wider sort of questions around performance levels this season, I think there is an aspect of hangover from not just last season, but also last seasons in there. And I think that's sort of hit the whole sort of structure of the side. And one of the things that's done is it's exposed Trent Alexander-Arnold a lot more. So Trent Alexander-Arnold ended up in a position this season where in years gone by, he's quite consistently had Jordan Henderson in front of him and Mo Salah in front of him. And this season, he's ended up in a situation where he's had the start of the campaign, especially Liverpool trying to play more expansively, and Harvey Elliott playing where Jordan's tended to play in the past. And Elliott's just not been able to offer the same protection as a midfielder to Trent as he's had. Football teams, they're interlocking parts. I think that, for instance, one of the things that I'm most impressed with Newcastle this season is, let's start with the left-hand side. It looks to me, whenever I catch Newcastle, Burn, Joe Linton, Willock, have felt a really, really sort of imposing left-hand side. They're really difficult to get anything out of. All physically really quite dominant. All huge. It works, and it's worked for an extended period of time. For me, the Newcastle sort of point, the wider point anyway, I didn't think, for instance, when you came to Anfield, I think Trippier was all that impressive. But the one thing he's had all season is consistency in terms of who's around him. So he's had a consistent option at the centre-half who's inside him, and he's had a consistent option in terms of the right midfielder in front of him. And I actually think the work rate and graft of Almiron and the brain of Almiron is one of the most underrated things about this Newcastle side. So I think it's been easier this season to be Kieran Trippier than it has been to be Trent Alexander-Arnold. He's had no consistency in selection in terms of who's inside him. He's had no consistency in selection in terms of who plays number 6 for Liverpool, because Fabinho has gone to pieces. Whoever plays number 6 for Liverpool's found it harder, because whoever plays right-hand side of that midfield has struggled, especially Elliott in a defensive capacity at times. And Salah's been a little bit off the boil. That said, listen, I've watched 5 years of sides trying to target Liverpool down Trent Alexander-Arnold's side. There's another reason why they chose to do that in the past as well. It was the side that Virgil van Dijk didn't play in. But what that means is a lot of opposition sides put all the resource, put the best players on that side, flip to that side, and look to target down there. And it happens game after game after game, because sides would only really try to attack Liverpool in one way. I think what's actually happened to Newcastle in the last 6 to 8 weeks is that sides have decided to play against Newcastle quite differently. And one of the reasons why I think there's been a fair few more draws and frustrations for this Newcastle side has been because sides are firstly happy to limit their attacking attempts against Newcastle and take a bit of an attitude of, well, we'll see what happens, and we'll only really target one area. Where that area is, they don't have a go anymore. Because they rate this side now and they're showing it the requisite respect. But when they do have a go, they'll have a go in one area. And it'll be interesting to see where that is. But when Liverpool have played for 5 seasons, it's been where Trent Alexander-Arnold is. Because he's not as good a defender as Andy Robertson, but Andy Robertson's absolutely brilliant. And also, though, it's not Virgil's side, because Virgil's been brilliant. So you attack the weaker centre-half and you say you think that full-back's easier. And then at times he looks like he's a little bit more exposed. I don't think he's any worse a defender than, say, Reece James. I think he's a better progressive passer than everybody in the division, with the exception of Kevin De Bruyne at his best. I don't think he's as... And I understand why, the England manager decides what he... I don't like the way the England manager talks about him, but I understand why the England manager decides what he decides. He's playing tournament football. I don't think he's necessarily as pure and natural right back. He's not come up in a Burnley system like Trippier did, first and foremost. I don't think he's the purest right back in the same way that Trippier is. But I think his all-round game, his range of passing, the way in which he's capable of releasing anyone on the pitch from anywhere at any time, is practically unique in world football. And Liverpool have lost that basis, that structure that gets Trent being able to play his best progressive football over the course of the season as the team's fallen apart around him. And what was your other point? What was the other thing you wanted to ask me?
I can't even remember what I said now. I was just gonna throw in. So do you think, talking about that then, Neil, and there's a couple of people in the chat put it in, given the positions that you did buy in the January window, do you think that the Klopp recruited in the wrong positions?
So in general, the Liverpool have decided last summer, Liverpool decided to try to hang on and do the midfield next summer. And the fact that Fabinho's form and performance has dropped off to such an extent, the fact that Henderson's had a really tough season, I think those two in particular have made that look like the wrong decision. So therefore, it was the wrong decision because they should have anticipated that that was something that was going to happen. But that said, I understood it. What I didn't like was the shift to try to play with an attacking midfielder, which was Elliott, without buying an attacking midfielder. So Liverpool, last season, it happened during the season, last season, not just this. Liverpool go to 4-2-1-3 in essence. So someone else sort of plays on that right-hand side and is really, really advanced. It was Naby Keita a fair bit. Jordan Henderson did it a fair bit, but he wanted to use Harvey Elliott there. And in the summer, he clearly decides that he's going to commit to that again. But Liverpool have only really got one attacking midfielder, and it's Harvey Elliott. So you end up in a situation where you've got a 19-year-old kid who ends up with loads and loads of pressure on him when Liverpool are trying to play a certain shape. And he's going to be a really good player, a really, really good player. But he is going to ultimately take a bit of time. And Liverpool have tried to shift this shape without buying an attacking midfielder. That makes no sense to me. That said, the two of the more sort of senior, stable midfielders, and Fabinho and Henderson, have had a real crisis of confidence, form and fitness over the course of the campaign. I think they've looked. Last season, Henderson makes 57 appearances in all competitions. To sort of put that in context, I think that's 12 more than Arsenal, full stop. You know, that's how many games he plays. And that's before he's played 90 games since the start of last season, Henderson, which includes his international games as well. It's so many games of football that he's ended up playing. And Fabinho's been in a similar boat because we go all the way in 4 competitions. And ultimately, these are footballers who just, couldn't keep going to the well in quite the same way. So in the end, Liverpool ought to have invested in midfielders last season. That said, you'd still would have had to move some on. We've got 9 at the minute as it stands. We're not short of midfield options. What we're short of is reliable ones, both in terms of performance and also in terms of fitness. So Liverpool would still need to move some on. And then in pre-season, when they might have chosen to move, for instance, Oxlade-Chamberlain on, he gets injured in the first or second pre-season game, which knocks him out of contention all the way until October. And everyone knows there's a World Cup in November, so no one's buying him at that sort of point. And now he can leave on a free. So he's kept his Liverpool status through January, but he can leave on a free next summer. So I think it was Liverpool got themselves into a little bit of a pickle, and I think that's been coming over a couple of seasons. The other way Liverpool have got themselves into a pickle, they've ended up with a really oddly balanced squad where ages are concerned. So they've got a lot of footballers who are over 29 and a lot of footballers who are under 24, now sort of 25. And they've had this gap for a while, but I think that's sort of back to running for the line when they could win the league in 2019. They do it works, but the flip side is the ramifications of that you're now sort of seeing some of in terms of precisely where that is. My point here is that Liverpool have got things wrong, but I don't think it's anywhere near as ununderstandable as lots of people sort of act as though it is. So, I think it's important to have that in mind and to go from there. So I'm quite, it needs to be resolved, and it'll get harder to resolve if they don't get Champions League football, let's be clear. So they'll put themselves in this position. But the best way to resolve it is to start getting some results. And the one shining light from the season really is Bajcetic, who's this young lad who's come through. He's absolutely tremendous, the level he's at already. And you can see him there, you know what I mean? He looks, he's so slight, but he's 6'1", 6'2". He's obviously going to fill out and go from there. And he's going to hopefully grow and improve and find his way through. Tom Dixon's just asked what happens against Wolves when you lost 3-0. Tom, we were absolutely shite for 20 minutes. And it was like the centre-halves had never played football before. It was like Joel Matip had literally someone before he got on the pitch had absolutely removed his brain. This is a fellow who's won a league and a Champions League. And it was absolutely horrendous at the first 15, 20 from Liverpool. And that feeds back into what I'm saying all the way through on this, which is that this game is, so from a Liverpool point of view, if we can get 2-0 or get 2-30 at 0-0, then I'll have a genuine sort of level of confidence. But there's been so many times this season we've conceded the first goal in really sloppy circumstances, and in the end, it's done us in. And that's that is the problem, and that is the thing that needs to be resolved. And it'll be intriguing to see sort of what the manager set up around that is. But Bajcetic, I think, will start. The only reason he doesn't start Bajcetic is if he's trying to save him for the game against Real Madrid, which is on Tuesday night.
Yeah. So for anyone in the chat that's not realised, obviously they've got a massive game on Tuesday night, like Neil just said, against Real Madrid. So, Neil, from your perspective, do you think there'll be players that may be rested ahead of that game? You know, I think Virgil van Dijk was on the bench. Do you expect him to play?
No, I think Virgil will start against Madrid, but he won't start this one, I don't think. I think it'll come a bit too early for him. Could be wrong. You know, the manager trusts Virgil, and Virgil's, when I say trust Virgil, what I mean is if he talks to him beforehand and Virgil says I'm fit, then I suspect he'll go with it, but I think he'll go from there. I think he'll be unchanged from the Everton team. I think it'll be the same side that played Everton, and he'll make judicious use of substitutions in terms of trying to rest some legs. But I think he'll also feel as though they need the rhythm of playing over and over again. Just on the idea of, you know, Mark Taylor there, without Champions League football, the best comment you made, Liverpool need respect, and Newcastle need respect and will finish top four. The Newcastle got a great chance of finishing top four, but the fact of the matter is, it's a Newcastle side that haven't won 50% of the games this season in the league. So they need respect because they're incredibly difficult to beat, but you need to win more games. You know, ultimately that's going to be the truth of this. And when, you know, before, when we were talking about, for instance, you know, Marty worrying about Newcastle stuttering, I think this is a massive game on Saturday, and I think Newcastle should go into it as favourites, don't get me wrong. But I feel as though everything's still up for grabs. There's a reason why sides that finish top four. They don't finish first or second. You drop a lot of points. You know, I've been in top four races. I remember them. You drop a lot of points. And all it takes is 2 or 3 good runs, one of which Newcastle have already had this season, I hasten to add, one of which United are now on. And you end up with a little bit more in there. You know, you get the buffer for when the bad run comes. And I don't think anything's decided with reference to the top four this campaign, not a thing. I think that there's so much left to go. You know, we've literally got, you can see there, you know, we've still got 17 games to play. We've got to get on a run at some point, don't get me wrong. And that's why for me this weekend, from a Liverpool point of view, it's about not losing. After Newcastle, for instance, we then play Palace and Wolves in the league back-to-back. This Newcastle game that remains is, I think it's our 3rd toughest fixture. So if we don't lose it and we can find some momentum from elsewhere, we've still got to go to the Etihad, which is obviously a really difficult game. We've still got Chelsea. We've still got to go to Stamford Bridge, which is a really difficult game. But of everyone else, everyone you look at there, Liverpool have been to Arsenal away, Man United away, Tottenham away, Brighton away, Fulham away, and Brentford away. So you're looking at the top 8, top 9 there. We've been to, after Newcastle, we've been to Newcastle away. So the only place we haven't gone is top of the Pops, and we beat them at Anfield. And we know that that's almost its own thing. It's a weird game when Liverpool play City. I would expect them to beat us currently, but it's a weird game when Liverpool play City. So everyone else we've been to their gaffs so far this season. And trust me, we've been shite when we've got there. But we've been and we played those fixtures. We've got a more straightforward run of fixtures coming. So we've got to just not lose this at the weekend against Newcastle. From a Liverpool point of view, we've got to just not lose this. And if we don't lose it, then from there, we can at some point get on a run. We've done it in the past. We'll do it again, where we win 4 out of 5 and then maybe we have a blip. But if we do 4 out of 5, 4 out of 5, and 4 out of 5, we'll be really there or thereabouts for top 4. And that's why I don't think anything's sorted. And in the meantime, there's a Newcastle problem, which is that I think that they've obviously missed Grimares since he's been injured. Injuries are beginning to mount up in a way which suggests to me there's been a lot of burden put on these footballers over the course of this campaign. Plus, there's also the idea of, you know, where we find ourselves with the World Cup as well, where players' fitness is. And it's interesting to me that at the minute, you know, Newcastle might have up to 6 or 7 or even 8 footballers out, because that is going to start happening to all these sides that are around Liverpool. We've had it all season, and hopefully ours have been in you know, are now going to come back and be in good nick, and we can go from there. None of that's to say I think that I'm confident, like I'm 100% confident Liverpool are going to finish top 4. A lot could go wrong, but absolutely nothing sorted out at this stage of proceedings. There's still so much football left to play, and if you're not going at better than 2 points a game, I don't think anyone should have any confidence that they think their side is definitely going to finish in the top 4.
No, I think it's a really good point, and you've mentioned about the away games you've already played. That for us, we're in exactly the same boat, Neil. Is that the only away ground we haven't been to in that top half of the table is or that 9 that you can see there is Man City and Brentford. So we've been to every away ground. A lot of those have still got to come to St James's Park.
Exactly. Yeah, I was just going to say that we've similar to Liverpool, as Neil saying. We've actually been to a lot of that top 8, top 9, and been away, kind of apart from City. So, you know, again, you've got that hope that with some of those coming to St James's, we, you know, look, I think Neil makes a really valid point, Pete, which is every team, you know, even the Newcastle fans, we knew at some point we would get a blip. Yeah. The problem, which I think a few people are making in the chat, is we just don't have the bench to cope because our financial revenue is not there to be able to go out and buy, another 5 or 6 during the winter window to be able to improve that quality on the bench. We will eventually get to that point, but we don't, we're not like a Chelsea or a City where you can take off 3 of your top players and bring on, Phil Foden as an example. We take our bench off and we're looking at Ryan Fraser and Jacob Murphy. So they're, it's yin and yang compared to where we want to be. And as I said, kind of coming on air, we're ahead of schedule from where we thought we'd ever be, and to run the way that we have run to get to a cup final and be sitting fourth, it's probably over flattering from a league perspective. But again, people would say, well, we are still sitting fourth. Yes, we've been in a shite run recently, but we've not been getting beat either.
Yeah,
and I think that's the thing, and that's what we were saying before coming on. If you're not going to win, don't lose.
Yeah, and that's what Newcastle done brilliantly all season. But now there's a question, which is what it looks like when sides also say, "We're playing Newcastle, don't lose."
Yeah.
And I think that's what's changed. I think that's changed in the second half of the season, and I think that's going to be the question: what do Newcastle look like when they've got to break someone down? I watched the Bournemouth game, and it's an unbelievably fortunate equaliser just before the break. As you acknowledged before, it's a really, really poor performance, I think. But also, Bournemouth's entire plan was just to play on the counter. Whereas I think if you play Bournemouth maybe first 4 or 5 games of this season, they might end up sort of considering to themselves, we'll have a bit of a go with this Newcastle side, and then before you know it, you're picking them off, and you're finding yourself that you're able to play a little bit on the counter. Similarly, you mentioned before there about us scoring 2 counter-attacking goals against Everton. Yeah, I've watched rubbish Liverpool sides before, or Liverpool sides that have found it really hard before. And then what happens is sides begin to just have a little bit more of a go, and then suddenly you're able to find your counter-attacking prowess because guess what? There's space to break into. And my thing on half 5 is I want that atmosphere to be as up as it possibly can be. I want you absolutely screaming at them, because what I want is for spaces to be left. If Newcastle push on and spend the first 15, 20, 30, 40 determined just to score, if Liverpool can hold off that early push, which will be rock hard to do because the atmosphere will be unreal. We know it's a really, really good ground. The atmosphere will be unreal. If we can hold that off, if we can see that through, and then Newcastle keep pushing because the crowd are calling on them to keep pushing, we've got Mo Salah, we've got Darwin Núñez, we've got Cody Gakpo. We can break into that space. And I want there to be spaces that are being left. And I think that the best way there are spaces that are left, obviously, it is if Newcastle are determined to give everything to open the score. And so, I'm confident that if that's the case, again, I'll say the thing I keep saying, get to 30. I watched Liverpool against Wolves. They were absolutely dreadful. I watched Liverpool against Brighton. They were absolutely dreadful. I've seen Liverpool a number of times this season away from home be really, really poor. But what the job then is get to 30 and just do it in slabs. And we've been really bad at that. We were better at it against Everton, and with a bit of luck, we'll find our way through and see if we can, if the opportunity is there, we've got to grab it. And for me, the battleground's Trippier versus Núñez, because if I'm Trippier, I want to know how high I can push. Because if I leave gaps, he'll exploit them, and it's one ball over the top. Then, if Newcastle push for the goal, Trippier pushes up the pitch. It's just a ball over the top. And Darwin can compete for anything, cause chaos, and go from there.
It's going to be interesting.
Sorry, wherever that was, Asheri. Yeah, Brighton were absolutely incredible. Like when we went to Brighton in the league, it's one of the best performances I've seen an opposition side take against us all season. They realised we were there for the taking, and they absolutely did us in. They were absolutely brilliant, Brighton. They were genuinely in that league game. They were absolutely magic from back to front.
And that's where we're going to need to be smart in our play, because look, Mark, we talked about this before we went on air, and we talked about if we are going to score, if we are going to take the lead, if we are going to cause Liverpool some problems, it's when. We know against West Ham we scored in the first few minutes, which was great at the time, but it was almost too early, and then they came into the game, they grew into the game. An early goal, albeit would be great, might not be the best thing for Newcastle long term in terms of the course of the 90 minutes. But
Pete, honestly, if you scored in the first 10, you'd make it 2. If you score first 10, you'll make it 2. The way this Liverpool side is at the minute. If you don't score in the first 30, then I think it's a game that can really go either way. But honestly, if you scored in the first 10, within 5, you'll make it 2. Not messing about.
Well, we were saying, Mark, weren't we? We were saying anywhere between the 15 and 30 minutes mark.
Yeah.
If we can score within that, it's a good position that we've built our way into the game. We're in the game. We're in the motion. We're in the routine of what we need to do. We get the goal, and then it's a great platform for us to then build and push on. Can we take it to half time? Can we then regroup? Can we then build again into the second half? Because I feel like, scoring early will give us the mindset of maybe sitting back, which is what we did against West Ham, and we ended up getting caught. Or it gives Liverpool the opportunity to really push people forward and really press for that goal. Do you think the same, Mark?
Yeah, I mean, I think Neil has a fair point about how far do our fullbacks push up? I think, again, if you are looking at that matchup, Nunez against Trippier, there's a massive height differential. So again, we seen from the break, the other night how quick he can be down that wing. So I think that is something that I'm sure Eddie will consider in the game plan. Having I'm sure he's been looking back at the match and everything else. But I think it's whoever takes control of the middle, I think will come out on top. I think that's where the battle is going to be. I think Liverpool have got that explosiveness to be able to break, but I think they only give that if we play stupid and we give the ball away sloppily, which against Bournemouth we did. So that will be my biggest worry, is that we tighten up our passing, because I think sometimes our eagerness to play the ball quickly, we play sloppily. Whereas I think we play better football when we're a bit more measured. We take a little bit more time. We don't try and press too quick. I think we're a bit more controlled and measured. When we try and push the game, our passing goes to shit. Sometimes, I was screaming at the, watching the highlights there the other night, the Bournemouth game, screaming at the TV, going, we couldn't string two passes together. Yeah. So I think if we do that, and it's outside of that midfield piece, or we don't contain the break if it happens, and we give a stupid foul away, or like we normally do, let someone like Salah into the box with ball at feet to be able to twist and turn, that fear for me is we give a stupid bloody penalty away. Because either of those two lads, Nunez or Salah, the first touch or tug of a shirt from Botman, Shaw, Byrne, or Trippier, and we know they're going down. So I think we just need to be clever. I think we need to be a bit more measured. I think Neil makes a really good point about if we go too gung-ho, it will leave that bit of space. Yeah. The crowd being us on, which, look, we will do. Crowd will be screaming. There is, for want of a better word, an issue of a little bit of revenge. We do feel hard done by down in Anfield. Take Neil's point about, but you didn't come out and take the game. Yeah, maybe second half we didn't. Bit of shithousery. Yeah, look, we can look at that. You see it from lots of teams. But Isaac's goal was perfectly good. The one thing I hope, is that if Isaac starts, which if Wilson is injured, he probably will, I think he's going to be fired up. And I think he's due a goal. And I think if he can get on his game and get at Liverpool's back four, I think we could see some reward there. So I think Isaac could be very, very much an important player for us in this game on Saturday.
Couple of things in the comments, just dead quick. Someone's asked how many goals has Nunez scored this season. The answer is 10, which is a decent enough return. If he ends the season with 20, would you say that's a good first season for him? I would, as a young forward, but we'll see how he gets on. But I think it's worth pointing that out. Gordon's dead interesting because, he loves going down easily, all that sort of stuff. He was doing it all the time with the Blues. But obviously,
there's the move, Neil. What do you make of the move to Newcastle?
I think it's a good move for him. He needs to get out of that club as quickly as humanly possible. They eat the young. So, I think getting himself to St. James is where he'll be loved, potentially, if he performs. Don't get me wrong, is no bad thing. And I think he needs to play for the side where, let's be clear about this season, for the rest of this season, next season, the season after that, at least 20 times a season in the league, Newcastle go into it as favourites every game. 20 games out of 38 minimum. And I think him playing for the favourites, I think it'll be good for his development, and I think he'll be a better player for it. So I think, and there's every chance he's a good sign. Tons of pace, be really effective and strong on the counter. Decision making needs a lot of work, but then he's a young footballer, so, and he's got a good manager now who'll help him with that. I think he might start this one because of the injuries, if nothing else. But I think, I think there'll be a bit of development with him. Listen, he could score 2 against Liverpool because, former Everton player, etc., etc. I think he's a fine signing. I don't know if he's a great one, and it could still go wrong. There's a litany of footballers who find themselves struggling a little bit. Yeah, he scored goals in the Champions League though, solo. Do you know what I mean? It's Europe's Premier Club competition, dickhead. There is a thing where, with someone like Gordon, where you've got to find your way through with him and be patient with him a little bit. The good thing from a Newcastle point of view, because you will be playing European football next year, and then you will find out what Premier Club competitions are, is that he's homegrown. And that stuff's going to matter, especially if Newcastle are going to continue to invest, having a hard core of homegrown footballers who you can build around for 5, 6, 7 years, because you can only have so many in the squad and go from there. And I wouldn't even worry about resale or anything like that nonsense there. Just come up as a comment. I think ultimately you want to. Like, I don't like thinking about footballers like that when we buy them. Do you know what I mean? Like, oh, well, we could buy them, and if we have to sell it, like, fuck that off. We want to enjoy our footballers when we've got them. We want to have a laugh with them. We don't want to immediately be saying, hey, they're like assets, like used cars on a lot. That's not the sort of the attitude that I ever want to have for a player.
But I think you're looking at the likes of Gordon. Like, we signed him, and it's like, okay, it's 40 million. And kind of, there's a bit of us, certainly from my perspective, having gone through Mike Ashley's years. And we've made the joke on some of the transfer shows, which we did in January and stuff, which was, do you know what I mean? Six months ago, we were scratching our asses trying to put in a bid to get, Hamza Chowdhury on loan from Leicester. And now we're just kind of waffling 40 million on Gordon, who, like some of our fan base is turning their nose up going, he's shite, he's not doing nothing for Everton. You're kind of looking at it going, hold on a fucking minute. Like, where's the sense of reality here, lads? So look, I think he'll do good. The kind of 20-minute cameo he had at St James's the other night. I thought he looked well. The forward play to Wilson. Wilson should have scored. Look, let's be honest. Should have scored. Fantastic tackle from the West Ham defender. But he should have put it away. Great ball. So I think I hope Gordon starts. I think he will as because of the injuries. And I didn't actually think about him. I was thinking more about Isaac, but he could make a difference in that midfield or playing just in behind Isaac. To link that midfield, but it'll be interesting.
I thought Isaac was brilliant at Anfield. Thought he was so lively. I thought he was really impressive. So I thought and if that Isaac turns up, then we're in for a tough time. But then you play against good centre forwards all the time in this league. You got to cop for it. Something else in the comments, and I think that there needs to be maybe a parliamentary inquiry into the fact that Geordie Toon for Life is only just taking his Christmas tree down this weekend. And if one of you wants to knock around to his and stage an intervention tonight and get on top of it. I think the better, the sooner that can happen, and go from there. I think honestly, I don't quite like he's still got the lights on.
Yeah, I think he's only out of rehab. Don't mind him.
I'm just worried, to be honest with you, for all involved. It's it just doesn't bode well, and I just want to know what the neighbours think.
I'd say he's leaving it up just to piss the neighbours off, mate.
I'm about to say they all say, have you seen him in 36? He's still got the tree up. That sort of thing as they go all the way through.
He'll just get to a stage where he just wraps it in a shrink wrap and puts it out in the kitchen.
Perfectly reasonable. We're not far away from being able to say there's an argument to keep it for next year. At this point,
you must not keep it up now.
Yeah, give it to a wholeheartedly.
You must not keep it up.
The Christmas fella. It's the Christmas fella.
That is brilliant. Oh my god.
I think in general there's and just on Gordon and on the Blues sort of in general. I think it's been really hard for a number of young Everton players, and I think he's genuinely got out while the going's good. And I think that's the main thing to sort of take. Like Tom Davies' career, I think would have been different if he'd have left Everton 5 years ago. I think it's not a good place to play football in general. And I think listen, don't get me wrong, there's been a bit of this with us this season. Curtis Jones has had a fair bit too much grief. Oh, here we are. He said the start of it wouldn't come down until we lose in the league. Oh man, it's got the lights on. It's number 4. Where I almost hope we win to put you out of your misery. If nothing else, if we win, I'll think of you. As and when that happens now. If not, I need to check your fixtures.
We go to the Etihad next. That's
you go the Etihad now. That's a relief anyway, for all concerned. So yeah, I think our worst game this season and why. Well, the saddest was Brighton away in the league, but they were great. It's probably just Wolves. I was on holiday in Dublin, having a very rare weekend off, and that was beyond grim. I didn't enjoy drawing 0-0 with Goodison, and Jota has a great chance actually last minute there. He's just come back from an injury and it's a struggle, and it just sort of bounces off him, and it's a real shame because it would have been a brilliant way to beat Everton, but that's not probably the worst one because we didn't lose. It was. Yeah, it wasn't nice losing 2-1 at Old Trafford, but we're actually all right at 2-0 down, as odd as that is to say, whereas Wolves away was just some sort of awfulness of everything sort of combined together. So with a bit of luck, we won't see one of them again. But I mean, from a bit of luck from my point of view, not from your point of view, you'd love us to be that bad. If we're as bad as we were first 20 against Wolves at St. James's when you've got the flags up for Bobby and you've got Isak playing, and Almiron playing, we'll be 4-0 down by 20 minutes if we're as bad as we were first 20 against Wolves. So hopefully we won't see that again. And you know, the Christmas tree will definitely still be up for at least one more week.
That is for sure. Look, we've got 140 in the chat. Thank you for supporting the channel. Whilst you're there, click that thumbs up, and if you've not already, subscribe to Loaded Mag NUFC. We're on the march to 6K. Look, that Christmas tree's completely just done me today. But look, let's get into the game. I want to talk tactics with you. We've talked a little bit about it, but let's see what the tactics board shows. But before all that, let's get some stats.
Evening, lads.
He appears.
Evening.
Good evening, 00 Stato. Keith, how are you?
Not so bad at all. Not so bad at all, lads. Looking forward to the occasion on Saturday. Marking Sir Bobby's what would have been his 90th, and obviously a great fixture. This is always a great fixture. This one, isn't it? With a lot of tradition, Newcastle, Liverpool.
We can tell that from the high energy you're bringing to the show, Keith.
You've just come back in, haven't you? You've come and joined us, so I appreciate that. But look, tonight we are talking about all things Newcastle, Liverpool. Like you said, a game that has a lot of history and tradition. So what have you got for us in terms of stats? Surely there's some good stats in there. We know about some of the ones that aren't so good.
Strap yourselves in because this is going to be rocky. Lots of head-to-head stats. Then I've got some stats on the players and the managers, and then some general stats as well in terms of how each team's doing and form-wise. But Newcastle's record against Liverpool in the Premier League since 93-94. Played 55, won 11, drawn 12, and lost 32 to Liverpool. So weighted in Liverpool's favour there, especially in recent years. Number of goals in this fixture as well. Lots of goals touched on as well. 169 goals, 111 for Liverpool, 58 for Newcastle. And Liverpool also have the better defensive record as well. 17 clean sheets to Newcastle's 8. Newcastle, we've just touched on there a bit earlier, don't have a great record in recent years in this fixture. The last 12, they haven't won a game. So that's 4 draws and 8 defeats in the last 12. Newcastle's last win in this fixture was in the 2015-16 season, winning 2-0 with Gini Wijnaldum winner in the 90th minute in December 2015, the season before he went to Liverpool as a player. And that had Steve McLaren as manager, so it shows you how long ago that was. General manager stats here. Jurgen Klopp, his record as Liverpool manager against Newcastle is nearly perfect. Managed 13 games, won 8, drawn 4, and lost only 1, which was the first fixture, I believe, the last defeat back in 2015. Eddie Howe, his record as manager against Liverpool, almost the opposite. Managed 16, won 1, drawn 1, and lost 14. We'll be hoping that changes on Saturday.
But you're telling us there's hope, Keith, right?
Exactly. There's always hope. There's always hope with Howe. There's always hope with Howe. It's got a nice ring to it.
It's unfair that though, and the reason why it's unfair is because obviously a lot of them come when he's Bournemouth manager, and he sets his Bournemouth team up in a way that was about how will he get Bournemouth to 45 points, and what he identified, because he's a smart manager, is to be pragmatic, and the way of being pragmatic was actually to be more attacking. So we had his Bournemouth team set up in a way which will play quite free-flowing football, and it'd lose a lot of games over the course of a season to, in inverted commas, the bigger sides. But what that would mean is that when it was going well for them for 4 of the seasons he was manager there, they cruised. They were very rarely even in a relegation dogfight, because he worked out how to beat the teams that were from 8th to 20th in the division and give themselves the best chance for that. But what you don't then do is when Liverpool rock up into town or Manchester United rock up into town, is you don't change it all. You just say we keep playing our way, and we might get beat, but we'll learn something, and we'll go from there. I always think that stuff's really, really harsh. And now when he's been Newcastle manager, it's not like managers can't coach in different ways. He's now got Newcastle playing really aggressive, physically imposing, pragmatic football. And from there, I'm sure he's got a plan to, might not happen entirely this season, but over the next 18 months, to sort of loosen that a little bit, get a bit more creativity in there, a little bit more flair, but hopefully not at the expense of what's a rock-solid defence. I just think that sort of stuff I always feel is just really quite unfair on managers, because it was never Eddie Howe's job to take 3 points off Liverpool when he was Bournemouth manager. It was his job to get to 45 points as Bournemouth manager, and the way to do that wasn't to beat Liverpool, it was to beat the sides that were in the bottom half.
Yeah, I always add a caveat when I talk about Eddie Howe's stats on recent shows, because I'll always say a lot of these fixtures came when he was Bournemouth manager at the time. And it's similar. I mean, Rafa did a similar job when he was at Newcastle, really, for lads. If you remember Rafa's jobs in games against Newcastle, it was always trying to get to 40 points. And he would nick a result here every now and again, a remarkable result against the likes of City. We all remember that game. But he wasn't about beating the big six all the time. It was always beating the teams around him and maybe getting a result against the top 10 side, or even a draw against one of the big six, which he did do.
No, you're absolutely right. Any more stats to hit with us?
Yep. That's just the middle of the stats. You'll be pleased to hear some general stats about players. I'd like to talk about Miguel Almiron. This season, with that goal against Bournemouth there on Saturday, is his season best, 10 goals in 22 Premier League games for Newcastle this season. Before that, he had a record of 9 in 110 Premier League games, so he's really came on this season. However, he hasn't scored in his last 4 games, home Premier League games, since scoring against Aston Villa. Mo Salah, 18 goals in 32 games. Darwin Núñez, I think you touched on earlier there, Neil, 10 goals in 27 Premier League games. And Roberto Firmino, 9 goals in 22 games, are Liverpool's highest goal scorers in the league so far this season. Also, Mo Salah is the most common goal scorer against Newcastle in recent years. 6 goals in 12 games and also 4 assists. Callum Wilson, again, a lot of his goals were against when he was playing for Bournemouth, 2 goals in 9 Premier League games against Liverpool. A bit about the goalkeepers. Nick Pope has 12 clean sheets in 22 Premier League games for Newcastle, compared to Alisson's 6 clean sheets in 21 games for Liverpool in the Premier League. A few general stats to round off here. Since losing 2-1 to Liverpool in August, Newcastle are unbeaten in their past 17 Premier League games, which is their joint all-time record in the league. And Liverpool's away form in the Premier League hasn't been as strong as their home form this season. I believe they've had 2 wins, 2 draws, and 6 defeats. They've scored 11 but conceded 19 away from home. whereas at home, 7 wins, 3 draws, and 1 defeat, and scoring 25 goals and 9 conceded at home. And their only away wins coming against Spurs and Villa so far this season. Liverpool haven't drawn a fixture away in the Premier League since drawn to Everton at Goodison Park in September. I believe you touched on that as well, Neil, saying
1st of September as well, by the way.
just after the Newcastle game as well. And here's the one as well about Liverpool. The past 3 away league games, 3-1 defeat to Brentford, a 3-0 defeat to Brighton, a 3-0 loss to Wolves. Liverpool haven't conceded 3 or more goals in 4 games in the league since going back to September 1954, so a very long time. And obviously, as we know, Liverpool were a very different team back then. I think they mightn't have even been in the top flight. I think I don't even think Bill Shankly was there at that stage, so they were a very
Shankly wasn't manager yet, no.
Yep, absolutely. So a different team back then when Liverpool lost 4 games in a row in the league by 3 goals or more. And that rounds off the stats.
Wow.
Superb stats as always, Keith. And you always like to give a little bit of balance between both teams. I know it's been probably more difficult with Newcastle, and there's been a lot of talk in the chat actually about some of the stats, and some saying, oh yeah, they're not great, but we are under new ownership now. We are a different Newcastle United, and this is really, really important because we're going to be moving in a different direction, fighting in a different ballpark to what we have been under the previous owner. So really, really interesting. I was going to go to the tactics board, but I'm going to step aside for that. I don't know how long you got with us, Neil. Are you okay for another 5-10 minutes?
Yeah, let's do that.
Okay. Just because there's a lot of questions that have come in around a lot of different topics that I want to, obviously, all of us want to throw your way. But there's one that's just come in. Don't know how true it is. I'm just going to put it on the screen, Mark, 1 second. 32 for last got put in. The Qatari Royals make a bid of $5 billion for Man United, according to Sky News. It hasn't come up on my phone. I'm not sure.
I'll flick over here now as well.
But
sorry, it's on
we
behind
know
me.
that Liverpool have been subject to some interest of a takeover. The Qataris, the Saudi Arabians, the American consortiums. There's so many different variables of ownerships, and Newcastle have come under a lot of scrutiny because of the Saudi Arabian ownership. And I know you were quite vocal last time you came on the show afterwards about the Saudi Arabian ownership. How would you feel about the potentials of a Qatari, Abu Dhabi, Saudi Arabian ownership coming in and taking over Liverpool Football Club?
I'll sort of reverse this, and we'll start here. I don't think in any way, shape or form states should be allowed to buy football clubs and run football clubs. And I don't think in any way, shape or form, certainly after 1 year, Mike Ashley and people like him should be allowed to run football clubs. The reason why I've always had a degree, more than a degree of sympathy with Newcastle around the takeover is because of what they were getting rid of, first and foremost. It was the worst type of person you can imagine to run a football club before we start to talk about barbaric regimes, in that he sucked the life and the love out of football. And we would not allow Mike Ashley, for instance, to buy Speak Hall in Liverpool. The National Trust wouldn't stand for it. The government wouldn't stand for it. There'd be questions asked in Parliament. Why people like Mike Ashley get to run cultural institutions like football clubs is, for me, a massive question and one that needs to be resolved. As part of that, though, we wouldn't want and shouldn't want effectively state-based regimes to buy and run football clubs. For me, it's not a conversation. It's a ludicrous position that English football's ended up in. And I completely back the idea of licensing around the Crouch Review was discussed as to who, the idea that effectively if you're not running a football club in the interest of the community, which for instance Ashley wasn't, you should be able to be compelled by statutory regulation to have to sell that football club. Absolutely. But I do not think that any state, I include Norway. Norway have got a massive massive public investment fund. Norway should not be able to buy Liverpool Football Club. Abu Dhabi should not have been allowed to buy Manchester City, and Saudi Arabia should not have been allowed to buy Newcastle United. And that's de facto what's happened here. And it's a huge problem for football, because what happens when the British government ends up in a difficult relationship with, for instance, Saudi Arabia? Now, there's loads of bits of British public life, people will now point out, undoubtedly, lots of bits of British institutions that have been bought by people in other countries, but that's exactly one of the issues where free market economics leads to. 10%, the 10th biggest landowner in the entirety of the UK, according to reports that came out during the World Cup, is the Qataris. Well, that's a problem. That's not a good thing. It's a bad thing, but that doesn't justify what we are or aren't doing with our football clubs. So my position is solid. It is what it always will be. And I want to be clear about this. I've got a lot of skin in the game. I run a company which employs 13 people. And if Liverpool were to be bought by the equivalent of the Saudi Arabian Public Investment Fund, I wouldn't be able to do my job. And that's, something that's quite serious. As I say, it's 13 people that we employ at the Anfield Wrap. We're really lucky to be able to do so. And it's because of the support of Liverpool subscribers that we are able to do so. But I wouldn't be able to do my job. And I also wouldn't simultaneously, whilst I'd be opposed to it, I wouldn't want to come over like the ghost at the feast either. I don't want to be a miserable old man saying that football will be better in my day. This isn't the same as me even saying that I would necessarily stop occasionally watching Liverpool on the television or even in person every now and again. It's more the idea of me being able to talk about Liverpool in an excited way would be difficult. Further, my argument has always been that Liverpool is its own political project. Liverpool's already a sports washing project. It's just sports washing for the city of Liverpool. Liverpool's already a political project. It's just political in the interest of the city of Liverpool. And all those around the world who choose to throw in with her. By the way, I hasten to add, those as well. There isn't room for anyone else. I don't want reflected glory. I don't want to say thank you to an owner. I never want to say thank you to an owner. Never in my days. I find the banner that Manchester City put up around the panic chap to be downright embarrassing. I find banners that thank owners of football clubs, e.g. Roman Abramovich, to be absolutely ludicrous. And I use the word, there's very few things that are embarrassing in football. We got beat 6-1, Steven Gerrard's last game at Stoke. I wasn't embarrassed. Very few things are embarrassing. That stuff's embarrassing. Thanking owners is embarrassing. Being beholden to rich people is embarrassing. And the reason why I made a joke after the Liverpool game against Newcastle. I'll surmise the joke here thus, that Newcastle had brought shame onto the great state of Saudi Arabia. This is a joke. I obviously know the city of Newcastle and the Saudi Arabians are very, very different. And lots of people took it as though I was having an unbelievable dig. We've got to be able to laugh at the rich men who own our football clubs. John Henry is the controlling stakeholder in FSG, and I think he's a fucking bellend. If we can't laugh at the rich people who own our football clubs, if we can't laugh at this stuff, we're fucked. Like, genuinely, the one thing poor people, and I'm not that poor, don't get me wrong, but the one thing that poor people in comparison to very rich people get to do in this country is point and laugh at them. If we can't laugh about who owns our football clubs, we're in real trouble. And that was what I was doing in the aftermath of the game at Anfield last time out. Genuinely, you're going to have to find a way to laugh at this, because you are owned by a terrible regime. You really are. There's no getting away from it. That doesn't mean you're terrible people. And it doesn't mean that by going to St. James, I don't think the 55,000 people who go to St. James's Park this week are morally reprehensible. That'd be ridiculous. I mean, first of all, Formula One come and choose to do this show. It will be that I don't think they should have been put in the... Football supporters should not have to care who owns their football clubs, because there should be regulation in place that ensures they're protected from ever having to care about that. And there isn't. I'm not forced to not just Conservative governments, but also Labour governments. It's a Labour government when Roman Abramovich buys Chelsea, for instance. This is... We need to protect football supporters from this shit, but we also need to protect them from people like Mike Ashley. All of that's my stated position and my repeated stated position. And I don't want it at Liverpool. Russ in 1892 has just said, great points, mate, but would you take it for your clubs? And my answer is no. Foxy said the Americans should have been able to buy Premier League teams as it's clear the plan was to turn, etc., etc. Now, I genuinely think there's a really strong argument. Let's be clear about this. I don't think I could buy an NFL club, because I think you have to be signed off by the other owners, and I think they're only prepared to sign off American ownership around NFL clubs. So let's be, I'm more than happy to say, let's have an argument and a discussion about who should or shouldn't own these clubs and what's the why and how we've ended up here. But that means we've got to all therefore move along and accept that we might not like some of what comes out in that argument. That does not reflect necessarily on us as people. if we glory the Saudi regime or feel we need to protect the Saudi regime because they own our football club, well, that's a bit of a problem. We don't need to do that. But you can have an honest conversation and say, I don't like these people. But also the other thing you can do is you can laugh. You can laugh at them. You can point at them. You can call them ridiculous. You can mock them. Mocking people's fine. It's absolutely fine. And I think ultimately, you know, PDK just said that don't thank our owners for giving us our club back. Yeah, right. Lads, they're doing that for a variety of reasons. And don't thank them. Fuck them. Genuinely fuck them. It's fine to have the attitude of fuck them.
Yeah.
While simultaneously enjoying the football, you can go fuck them. Doesn't matter.
Yeah, you know the thing is, Neil, I had this discussion with Pete because obviously I didn't sit in with you last time. First time we've kind of got together, but I said for me, you know, I'm you know, Daz and the other guys that run the show with us, you know, I'm a bit more senior than they are. So you know, I've sat through the Mike Ashley, but I was part of the Keegan era, you know, John Hall. And I said, I you know, the ownership, okay, there's two people, you know, effectively the figurehead in Amanda Stavely and Gadusi. And, you know, look, they do what they do behind the scenes and everything else. And, you know, we were having this chat kind of off air. And I said, you know, I as an individual, have an opinion, but I can't affect with that opinion what they do in a different country. So for me, I actually don't give a fuck about any of that because I just, you know, and you know, I should have said this earlier, but like I live in Dublin now, from the northeast originally, I now live in Dublin. I'm just looking forward. Like we have a game, we're coming over for the corporate game in April against Southampton. I just can't wait to get back home and go to a fucking game. I don't give a shit who owns it, but what I have got now that I haven't had for 14 years is hope.
Yeah.
And that for me is that outweighs anything around all the other stuff that comes up on whichever type of agenda, be it press, papers, TV, other fans, whatever else. I'm not interested. I have no interest. I don't care what they do in Saudi Arabia. There's nothing I can affect by it by putting on a black and white shirt. So I'll go to the games. I'll enjoy it. I'll watch the game from Wembley in a week's time, praying that we beat the Manx, and I'll have that rekindled love for my club and that hope that I haven't had for 14 years. So as long as I've got that hope, that's all I need.
And that's perfectly reasonable. And I think and this is where we've got to be aware of where the lines are here in terms of what it is that we actually want. And as I say, I feel as though the idea of who does or doesn't own a football club should be heavily regulated. Not just a little bit regulated, heavily regulated.
It's going to go down that direction, doesn't it?
Well, it will do, but by then people will be in, and you're not going to force people to sell football clubs. And actually, there's an argument that you shouldn't either.
I think there's an important thing here, though, Neil, and that is that, yeah, and you kind of nigh on commented on it earlier on when you started talking, which is, you know, these you know, states, Americans, whatever it is, they you know, I would say there's probably a touch with our owners that they kind of get the region and doing things, and you know, you do see a bit of that, so I get that, but it's no longer the unfortunate thing with the Premier League and you know, the likes of PSG, the likes of Bayern Munich, the likes of Barcelona, Real Madrid. It's unfortunately for the fans, it's a game. For the sport, it's no longer a game; it's a business.
Yeah,
the Premier League is a business, and it's about making money. It's no longer the game of football. It is for us, the Joe Soaps of this world. For me, I turn the match on 5:30. I'll watch Newcastle, Liverpool, and I'm all about the game. For that top tier and above, as you said, for the rich and above, this is a process of purely making more money and getting your bang for your buck. And I'm sure, you know, Bowley and, you know, PIF and everyone else, they want to turn that investment into a money-making chip because that's what it's about. It's a return of investment. So unfortunately, sport is no longer a game.
That's part of it, but I think that the difference is, and where there's attempts, which we're now much wiser at since 2008 in Manchester City, there's attempts to try to reflect that back onto specific states themselves and warm that process. And that's what I mean about sort of reflected glory. For me, Liverpool's glory solely goes to one place, the city of Liverpool and all those who sail in it. Doesn't go anywhere else. Certainly doesn't go to fucking Boston. It goes to the city of Liverpool and all those who sail in it. It is different if it's a state. It just is. And there's people there talking about, British and American foreign policy. Trust me, could be more critical of British and American foreign policy, British and American domestic policy, fucking frankly. But ultimately, what is different about that is that there's private owners and then there's owners that have public attachments and public involvements. And that's hugely problematic. It really is part of why the Manchester City situation has developed to the point that it has, that there's 115 charges, is everyone's so careful about throwing anything into the water because it actually will create a diplomatic incident. If the Premier League comes down on Manchester City like a ton of bricks, it will create a diplomatic incident because they are owned in massive part by the people who run the country.
And we had that situation last year, didn't we, with Chelsea? And that brought everything into disrepute, and it was a situation who'd have thought that when the Premier League came about in 1922 that it would eventually lead to something like that?
Yeah,
where Chelsea nearly went out of business. It was at risk for a lot of time, and there's a lot of other things that are just expanding. You've got the City situation, obviously you've got us and our situation, the Qatar. If they were to come in and get Man United, you'd have that situation as well. It's no longer anywhere near where it was, really. As Martin says, we're all global brands, unfortunately.
Well, we are, but then Borussia Dortmund are a global brand, and that can't happen to them. Bayern Munich are a global brand. That can't happen to them because there's regulation in place that stops it. It's that straightforward. And the people who run football and the people who have ran governments in this country that are ultimately responsible for football have chosen not to ring fence that off and make that as impossible as it literally is in German football, in a German football capacity. And so, you've got to therefore, and this is what it comes back to me. It does not come back to usual football supporters. Now, usual football supporters have got a decision to make, don't get me wrong, as to where they are. And I'm not going to, other than extreme examples like the ludicrousness of wearing Saudi regalia, I'm not going to point the finger at anyone. I'm not going to point the finger at Newcastle supporters. I might laugh occasionally. I might take the piss, but I feel I'm well in the realm of being a football supporter. We're all well within the rights to do that. And trust me, I'm not going to take the piss as much as I take the piss out of our blue brethren across the park. But we've got to remember those little bits and pieces, and we've got to sort of look after each other a little bit. And I think it's perfectly legitimate to say you don't want this and you wish it wasn't in English football. I think it's a perfectly legitimate position. It's certainly the one that I hold, and it would be difficult for me, in the knowledge that, by the way, I'm not coming off the back of literally a Liverpool supporter situation like Mike Ashley. I remember Hicks and Gillette and what that was about, and going all the way back, I was part of Spirit of Shankly, and at that point, I remember the fact that we'd have taken anyone, and that's why I've got so much sympathy towards Newcastle supporters. We'd have taken anyone to have got them out, anyone. And that's why, as I say, this isn't about the supporter base. It isn't about the people in Newcastle. It isn't me acting as though anyone's absolutely ridiculous or anything like that. But ultimately, we should not allow our game to be used in this way. And I do not want Liverpool to be used in that way under any circumstances. And if that does happen, if someone does come in that regard who looks after Liverpool, then I've got a massive decision to make. And it's actually one that will impact quite literally my livelihood. And I have to think about it all the time. And I don't want that. And I think that it'll be 1-1.
There you go. 1-1. That moves it on nicely. What do you want to do then? Do you want a few questions and then we'll go to score predictions? What do you want to do? Let's do it.
We're literally on question one. That was question one.
I know. Somebody just somebody just literally sent me a DM and just said, "Can you fuck off with the politics?" So yeah, we're moving on, lads. But everybody, at the end, it's good to discuss, right? Okay.
The one thing I'll say is that I would love, Neil, I'd love for you to come back and we can really just get to grips with this conversation in itself.
Let's do it in the summer.
Another time.
Yeah,
absolutely. Let's do it. It'd be a great discussion. But
here we go.
Throw a few questions.
Yep, here we go. Okay, we'll throw through. Okay, first one then from Tom Dixon. Where do you think you finish? Top 4? Number 4. Okay.
So, right, hold on. And added to that, who's in your top 4 if Liverpool make it?
I think if Liverpool gets a result at St James's Park this season, and I think that includes a draw, then I think there's every chance the top 4, actually top 6, ends up being the classic Premier League top 6. Sorry, that's just what I think may well happen. I think that you're already seeing the stresses and strains of the season beginning to take its toll on a couple of the sides. I think Arsenal are a really interesting case study at the very top of the table in terms of suddenly an increased number of injuries. I think that there's every chance that this has been a really long, arduous campaign, and Newcastle have put a lot in physically, and I think that it might just get a little bit tiring.
Finish it. What we finished below Spurs?
Seventh.
Below
I think
Spurs?
there's a reason. There's literally a reason why there's correlation between wage budget and finishing position, and Newcastle's wage budget is still not as high as Liverpool's, Arsenal's, Tottenham's, Manchester City's, Chelsea's, certainly Chelsea's, and Manchester United's. And that those correlations have been in place for years. There's a reason why the top six finish in the top six most seasons, and it's rare you get a disruptive team like Leicester. I think Newcastle can be a disruptive team, don't get me wrong, but I still think that it is very, very possible that the top six become just the top six as the season wears on, including Chelsea running up the table, because there's still so many games of football left to play. And there's people saying, "No, I think you're mad," and all this sort of stuff. This is a Newcastle side at the minute who've got injuries all over the pitch. And when you begin to get injuries, you get more injuries. And I think that's, for me, the one thing that's in Newcastle's favour is that once the game next weekend's out the way, they are back to just a league programme. There's no FA Cup and there's no Europe. And I think that can work for them, and that can allow them to focus in. That's the big thing that's in Newcastle's favour. Yeah. But I think that I think that at some sort of point, there's been people in the comments making noises about the fact that there's a problem, which is that the first sub's Jake and Murphy, and I couldn't agree more.
Yeah,
and that's
we say
it every single week when we see him get off the bench. So yeah, not the only one. Right, okay. What have we got? Pete, this one's for you. Are you on Race for Europe later on?
Well, it's already started, but if I get time, I might switch over, but I'll see. This is the priority.
Okay. What else we got? Miggy was in. Geordie for Team for Life said Miggy was in training. Apparently came around to turn his Christmas tree lights off for him. Craig Lee says Willock injury throwing a spanner in the works, and Bruno sending off has us down to the bare bones.
Yeah.
Fair point.
Willock's not making the final. He's not making the final.
No, he's not. Craig Lee then says, can Klopp turn it around?
Yeah, absolutely. No shadow of a doubt. It's not, for me, it's not complicated. He will turn it around.
How many years do you think he'll stay at Liverpool? I think he
might extend beyond his current contract 2026. I think he will extend beyond.
Russ's question says, "What's Neil's thought on Clippity Klopp? How long's he got?" And also,
I think he'll sign. It's 2026. I think he'll sign an extension to 2029, and then I think he'll leave in 2028.
Okay. Wow. Mark Taylor then says, "Guys, Pete knows me from Dan's 12th Man podcast. Says an Arsenal fan, no agenda, but Liverpool is shit. Newcastle beat them 3-0. There you go."
Did you watch Arsenal last night? Sorry about that, Mark. Hard lines, lads. It's a shame you've got no fucking legs.
Foxy then, question for Neil. For me, Liverpool's biggest miss is clearly Luis Diaz. Doesn't really get the mention, but would you agree that the energy the team is missing?
Missed him massively. I still think Jota's a bigger miss because he scores the game-breaking goals, but the two of them together has been just an absolutely massive blow, and that's why I take your Mane point in general. But I think ultimately, if Jota and Diaz were fit,
Diaz bring that energy.
Yeah, we bring that as well.
Okay. One from Mad Mag Mark says, stadium expansion question: will the Anfield Road stand be set to be completed next season? What would LFC look like if they expand the Dalglish stand next to meet the ever-increasing fan demand for tickets?
Madman Mark, I would love to see them really be ambitious and do something fucking brilliant with the Kop. Is there a way to make the Kop bigger? At the minute now, the Kop has become Liverpool's fourth biggest stand, which it should not be. So is there a way to continue to have a one-tier Kop and have it push further back? Is there a way to do that? That's what I would have my stadium-based boffins working on night and day.
Okay, fair enough. I think one of the things they need to do on Anfield is do something with a bit of sound, because it's often like a library when we go down there. But anyway.
You've all been complaining about getting booed off.
Oh, that's only 2 minutes. You got to make noise the whole 90, mate. Wait till Saturday. Okay, question then. Where do you see Harvey Elliott playing in 3 to 4 years' time? He looks an excellent prospect, but where do you see him playing?
And that's a really hard question. I think he's not quick enough to play in a front three for Liverpool, and I'm not quite sure about him in midfield. Ultimately, I think Liverpool would like him to be like Bernardo Silva. That will take a fair bit more work, but I think that they'll try to use him like Bernardo Silva is used, where he doesn't have one specific position. I mean, Bernardo Silva ends up playing left back against Mark Taylor's Arsenal and cruises through the game, frankly. So, I think that it may well be that Harvey moves around the pitch a little bit.
Okay. Russ, one of our sponsors, main sponsors, I'm sure Pete will mention him shortly, just says, who, if anyone, would you take from the Newcastle squad to improve the Liverpool squad, and you can only choose one?
Then I'll have Gamerish.
Okay.
No.
It won't happen.
Pete got there before.
Pete, I haven't got that power.
Yeah.
Don't worry, it doesn't happen. He doesn't now rock up to Anfield. He's not training with Liverpool tomorrow.
Yeah, no, he's busy on Instagram. He's also chauffeuring Joe Linton around the town. So, yeah. Tom Dixon, I think we kind of covered that. Why is Núñez not scoring? As Neil said, he scored 10. It's not a bad season so far, but there's room to move around. Mark again says Newcastle conceded the least amount of goals in the league. Why, without a midfield, can anyone connected with Liverpool feel confident going to a stadium filled with 52,000 mental fans? Fair point.
Yeah, but all the way through, I've been saying Liverpool need to get through the first 30. Does that sound like the talk of a man who's unbelievably confident? My point is more, if Liverpool do get through the first 30, then I think all results are possible.
Okay. Tom Dixon then, question for Neil. Who do you think may leave Liverpool in the summer?
Milner, Oxlade-Chamberlain, Keita. I think that it's possible Firmino doesn't get a new deal. That's not been sorted yet, at which point he would go. I think it's possible Fabio Carvalho goes out on loan or leaves on a permanent deal. I think Kahiv Kelleher will leave in the summer because he should go and play first team football somewhere else. And it wouldn't surprise me if Big Joel Matip, he's only got 1 year left on his deal, if he moves on this summer for a nominal fee.
Okay.
Ooh, okay.
Ash says Alisson has looked bad this season. Do you agree or disagree?
Disagree. I think there's been moments where he's had absolute shockers. Don't get me wrong; it's an important point. He's had like nightmarish seconds in games, but on the whole, I actually feel as though he's if he hadn't been as good as he is, then we'd be in even more trouble than we are.
Okay. Alan Thompson says, Neil, have you been surprised personally how bad Liverpool have been? And would you expect Middle Eastern owners more on the landscape?
I've dealt that bit. I've dealt with that bit. How bad we've been this season? I've been surprised by it, yeah. I think it has been genuinely surprising. I don't think anyone really had Liverpool at 9th at the start of the season at this stage. So it's not a surprise. That said, there's a two-legged affair against Real Madrid coming up. And as I keep saying, there's still a lot of football left to play. So you've got to pull that round, and I think that 2 positive results in the next 2 games. And I want to be really clear: neither of those positive results, even both of them, don't have to be wins. Liverpool need to get a result in the Bernabeu under all circumstances. So I'm quite relaxed going there with a draw, and a draw this weekend's absolutely fine as well. But you obviously then got to back both of those results up in wins in the same competition.
Win. Yeah. Okay. And then last one: do you think Liverpool will eventually get new owners?
Eventually, yes. Do I think it'll happen in the next 18 months? No. I think there'll be an investment. It wouldn't surprise me if someone comes in as a partial investment just to make the whole thing even more morally complicated, I suspect. But I think it'll be. I don't think in the next 18 months somebody else will majority own Liverpool beyond Fenway Sports Group.
I agree.
Okay. All right. That's all the kind of questions that we had marked out, mate. So if you want to do a bit on sponsors and whatever else,
we certainly will.
There or thereabouts.
Yeah, we are there. Firstly, thank you for everyone in the chat tonight. All your questions, all your comments.
I tried to get to as many as I could, so if I missed you, I do apologise.
I think we nailed it. That is for sure. And Russ was in the chat. The radiatorshed.com. So massive thanks to everything with regards to Russ. I'll just take that banner off. Just a second. Thank you for everyone for all your support, Russ, in the chat tonight, and all your support with the channel in general. We'll put Neil and Keith in jail in the doghouse. As you can see, go and have a look at the Radiator Shed. Fantastic support. As always, they provide top quality materials made from plate steel, providing longevity. All designs are manufactured in Italy. Aluminium rads are very environmentally friendly and are perfect for heat source pumps. They offer home survey service and will install if required. And look, they have a very good range of color selections of radiators. Check them out. They are fantastic, and we plug them every week because we know how good they are. I just wish we had you as a sponsor 6 months earlier, because then my radiator right next to me would have been one of yours. That is for sure. And we've got our fantastic new sponsor, H2O Bathroom Designs. They are a huge support to the channel. The Northeast's largest suppliers of Vilroy and Bosch bathrooms, where Team Valley Gateshead, over 20 years established and ran by the family. Get down to showrooms, 11th Avenue, Team Valley Estate in Gateshead. And look, just have a look at some of the absolute quality of some of the bathrooms.
I would like to just add that these are just from Pete's house.
You know what? If it was up to my wife, it would be.
It would, and mine. Turn those pictures off, will you? Because my mot's going to watch this back, and it'll be,
I blame Russ, because when these pictures came in, I honestly, it was like, right, okay, we've only just got the kitchen done. Right, we need to get the bathroom done.
Yeah,
okay.
No, let's get them off there.
Thanks a lot.
Who's been at Daz's house?
Exactly. But absolutely fantastic designs and top quality. Of course, if you're not a member of the Loading Mag NUFC channel, get yourself involved. $1.99 a month. You have to do it on laptop. Click that join button, the blue button there you can see on the screen, and become a member. We have a members draw coming up very, very soon. Look, guys, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you. First and foremost, more to come and join us tonight. Neil, you've got something to say?
Yeah, just a quick. Tom Dixon makes 2 great points. One of them's a bit saucy. First of all, everyone should hit the likes. It's been made the point earlier up that there's the likes to viewers corresponds isn't what we want. The other thing is, you know what I mean, he's got my attention. He's having a lovely soak in the bath with candles lit, and he's having a brandy. I didn't realize that sort of chat, Tom. But I'll message you later on, and we'll see how we're both getting on. All the best.
I think that's a slight hint towards my brother above me there to the left, with a soak in the bath and the brandy. But
that's me.
Certainly got the brandy. But don't let his missus let Mrs. Davy see those pictures, or my wife, because otherwise me and Mr. Davy will both be looking for second jobs to try and pay for them.
We certainly will.
Exactly.
You're not wrong. But
I tell you, we know the score, pal. We know the score.
We do, definitely. Neil, look, you've got your promotion in the back. You've got your channel in the back. Listen, the Anfield Wrap, and if anyone knows any Reds who probably aren't watching this, but if you're Liverpool supporters who don't know about the Anfield Wrap or anything like that, then just point them in our general direction. We did something really good this week. For anyone really about what happened in Paris with 2 of the people who were part of the Panel Report writers, with Clifford starting with Pete Wilkinson, KC, it is now. It's available for free, and it's worth listening to for anyone who wants to think about sort of large-scale events. Newcastle will, at some point in the next 10 years, be in a European final. And the thing that I want to happen, no matter whether or not people like my jokes about Newcastle's owners, are that people should be kept safe at those events. So we did something this week. It's on Audio Boom. Search the Anfield Wrap on there. It's the most recent thing, and you can check that out. And it's for any football supporter, I'd argue. Get onto it. Follow the Anfield Wrap on Twitter and Instagram. See a lot of your videos, Neil. They're absolutely spot on. So get onto the Anfield Wrap. We as a channel, we have fantastic guests that like to not just talk about all things Newcastle, but football in general. So no doubt they'll be joining you guys. And of course, 00 Stato, Keith, absolute legend, great stats as always, a valuable member of the channel, and we really, really appreciate your support as always. And I said it before, but I'll reverse back and say it again. Mark, absolute pleasure. Great to see you on. Great to see you on the mend.
Always enjoyable. Always like seeing Keith. And Neil, great to meet you. First time, mate. Hopefully we get to catch up again, pal.
Let's do it again in the summer, in all seriousness, and we can have the big conversation then. And absolutely, people can opt in or out. You don't have to listen. It's fine.
Yep, exactly. Yep. No, we will get that done.
Definitely. We've got a review show on, I think it might well be Saturday, because we have the Tomb Review Loading Mag NUFC show on our channel, the Reverse Fixture. That should be an interesting chat. So a couple of shows to look out for. Look, guys, as always with the away days, it's always a fantastic show. Great chat, great discussion. Best of luck for Liverpool for the rest of the season after Saturday. Not too much good luck, because we want that 4th spot just as much as you do.
You've got 2 games coming up. You've got the cup final next weekend, and you go to Goodison Park. It's currently down as Tuesday, the 25th of April. Don't fuck about.
Yeah, that's the message to all the Newcastle players and Eddie Howe, and I would echo that. Cup final, Goodison Pot, we need to win both, and the rest of the games, that's for sure.
Yeah.
But look,
I actually said that to you, Pete, when we were coming on. I said, for the first time in, I don't know, 20 years since I've lived here, I've got so many Scouse mates I work with actually backing us next weekend. They're going, listen, mate, we're all behind you. So it's actually, for once, being in Dublin in a black and white shirt is paying dividends for a change with a few people. So, and also, Neil, next time you're over, mate, drop me a message or drop me a message, and I'll catch you for a beer, pal.
Tremendous stuff, Marty.
Top stuff, guys. It's been a pleasure. Chatters, it's been an absolute pleasure. And of course, we do love playing away. How'd you like that?